Good afternoon, people. 4:29 p.m., 8/24/2017. The sun is shining down the lake house. Okay, this is actually something I was going to put together real quick for my Echo Dancer on WordPress, because I haven't posted there for a really long while, and I got to thinking of the people there, and I think I even changed email addresses. So if I was getting any alerts like I was at a different email address, I'm not getting those now. So I don't know what to do about that right offhand. Plus I'm still kind of sleepy from getting a nap this afternoon, which I guess I really needed because I wasn't feeling too kicky. But the things I wanted to talk about was how they knew, and I told this to my son this afternoon because I don't know what his thing is, if he watches or my screencasts or what, but they knew because for paperwork they needed to know, of course, and I'm sure they took it down. I'm sure they took it down even before there was an actual change of address, because when that all happened, it went rather quickly because we were on the time frame. You know what that happens when you move. A lot of times you have to be on a time frame to get from one place to the other without anything lapsing, which was what our case was, that we didn't want days lapsing at one place before we could get into the next place. So we were rather tight, and John did a lot of it with a hand truck because it was pretty close. It wasn't that far from where we were to start with. But they knew, and then when they came over to the house, because they had gotten all this ball rolling on us from a call they said from someone who said we had dragged our son up concrete steps, which didn't prove out, but there were no signs of that at all. But they do that. They to get their foot in the door, so to speak. They'll even make stuff up on their own just to go in. Like, see, our house had been several different things over the years, but it was one of the older ones from back when Sedalia was young. And maybe someone saw it as an opportunity. I've never seen the inside of that house, and I'd really like to see that house in real life. So it could have been something like that. I'm not saying it was. It's just the whole overall thing about it, that house sat empty for quite a while, and the people that lived inside it before we got it, I guess they broke their contract or got evicted or whatever it was. And the story was they had been drinking and would sit out on the porch and make racial slurs at passers-by. Well, you can't really do that, You can if you're an idiot and you want to risk getting someone upset enough to report you or worse, So after they realized it wasn't that family living there anymore, everyone was pretty peaceful towards us. But the thing of it is, alright, they knew there was a daycare across the street. My son was made to attend that daycare, even though I didn't really want him to. I wanted him home with me. But as it were, daycares are good for kids, supposedly, unless, like me, they turn into a runaway from abuse or whatever. So There's no doubt in my mind. It's not, it's indisputable that they knew where we were moving. So, with that in mind, if they knew, why did they let it go through? Why didn't they say, wait, look, Myers, you can't move there. That's too close to a daycare. They didn't do that. We moved there and they knew it. That's the whole thing with that right now. They knew that and they didn't attempt to stop it. Do you see? It would have been simple for them to stop that. That's just making me so sick in my stomach. Okay, they knew. Alright? Knew we moved across the street from a fully operational, functioning daycare that they ended up wrangling our son a spot in so he could attend to. Whatever thing they had to do, that's how it worked, because you know they can only take so many. I'm not sure how many they can take. Sometimes that's because of how many workers they have there, or how big the space is, or how many they're licensed for. But they can only take so many. Some of you might have known that. I'm not even sure I knew all of anything back then. I was just so... I was being made fragile. While we were being set up to fail, I just got more fragile as time went on, until I was just like this little blubbering pile of nerves, raw nerves, that every time they'd step foot in my house, I'd just about retch, you know. I just wanted to hide, and eventually had to get my mother every single time, or change the appointment to when she could be there. I don't even know if I could think of that on my own at the time. They were taking me by the short and curlies, you've got to understand that, and twisting. So I think part of it was they just wanted to get me. They were out to get me. That's what it feels like. Some might argue that. That's fine. That's up to you. But they knew we had moved across the street from that daycare. That is undisputable. Undisputable pre-knowledge that we were living across from a daycare in downtown Sedalia. Excuse me, on a 20-year contract for deed. Alright? I had to take a sip. So why weren't they more vigilant on behalf of that whole slew of kids? I don't know how many, but to me 5 is a slew, because that's a lot, you know. Why weren't they in the least little bit insecure with that? Firstly, of that going to happen, and further, that it wasn't stopped. Nobody said, no, wait a minute. This guy's got a prior, or got a offense on him, but you're going to allow this. Okay? So because there wasn't an offense on him actually, which I knew all about this craziness that had been not only drudged up against him, but drudged up against the rest of us, to see if they could make us go insane too, like themselves. You know how misery loves company, right? Well, I believe that's the gist of their whole thing right there. Misery loved company They didn't want to be alone in being thought of as nuts. Okay? So whoever they could drag down and get to appear to be also nuts like them, they're going to be happy with that. Do you see what I'm saying? They're going to be happy as long as they weren't the only ones, excuse me, who people sometimes called crazy. Because they do crazy things. It's no secret. There's no denying that either. There's no denying that they allowed someone who later they sentenced as a repeat offender based on a non-existent prior move across from a daycare. And that's what I'm about these days. If he had that prior, then he would have had it in the 90s, early 90s, I forget when exactly. But he would have had it then just the same as he had it in 95. And they would have based not allowing him to contract that house based on how close it was to a daycare, because Sedalia has that 1,000-foot rule, okay? Can't be closer than 1,000 feet in Sedalia, Missouri. So our house, and I explained it in another video, was relatively close to, essentially across the street from a daycare, even though our little vacant lot was there on the corner. Let me think a second. Northwest corner of 2nd and Washington. No, wait a minute. 2nd and Washington, it'd be the southwest corner of that little cross section there. They knew. And they didn't say, hey, not even jokingly or curiously, hey, how are you guys swinging getting around the law here about you living so close to a daycare, John? They didn't even go there. That's why I told my son on the phone today that to me it's full-blown Pizzagate at this point with all that. Because, and I'll tell you why, I Googled his daughter's name. When my mother-in-law died, and I looked it up online to read the obituary, of course, and see whatever tributes were there. And there's her married name. So of course I Google. Of course. I'm a human being. I Google, okay? Don't hold it against me. Google showed her address being right next to a preschool. After the pre-knowledge that they had in 95 when they got that letter from her mother stating, not in so many words, that her daughter was a deviant. Okay, some of you have read the letter. I've shared it. I've had it in screencast in that to show that part. You know. And further with that pre-knowledge that they had of her being a deviant, we were not warned. And we had, like you heard me say, our young son, who at that time, when we first moved there, he was daycare age. And then by 93, he was probably 5-ish. They knew we had a young child in the home and sent her with that information I got from the state in 1997 that was written to the prosecutor and a social worker in October of 1990.